Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Movies Before and After. I'm Jake.
I'm Ben.
And today we're going to go see I, Tonya, which is not an Apple product.
It's weird because I've heard a lot of good things about this movie, but I think it looks like it's just going to be like another biopic.
Yeah, it looks a little bit tropey, but it's been reviewed as like the Scorsese movie of the Goodfellas of biopics.
Yeah.
It looks exciting.
It has a 7.7 on IMDb out of 10.
And we all know IMDb is just the authority on fine films.
I didn't look up the Rotten Tomatoes score, but it does have a 77 on Metacritic, too.
I think the Rotten Tomatoes is in the 90s, if
Yeah.
I remember right. And I don't know anything about Tonya Harding except that her friend got bashed in the kneecap.
I mean, I know who she is. I know she was like a big-time figure skater in the Olympics, and I know that there was some kind of controversy surrounding her and a competitor. I didn't even really know that much about it, to be honest. And I kind of want to keep it that way going into the movie. It's directed by a guy named Craig Gillespie, who has done a film I've heard of called Lars and the Real Girl.
Where did you meet this person?
I met her on the internet.
Yeah, well, everybody's doing that now.
You know, Bianca's a missionary.
But I've never actually seen it. It looks like a mumblecore type thing with Ryan Gosling. So I don't know if that movie's any good. I've heard good things. I think it's on Netflix.
Actually, just canceled mine.
Yeah, I canceled my Netflix a few months ago, actually.
I don't ever watch it. I don't know what I'm going to do now that I can't watch Bright and its 8 scheduled sequels. But
anyways, I, Tonya stars Margot Robbie, Allison Janney, and then like a whole bunch of other people that I've never heard of. So obviously Margot Robbie is like a really talented actress. I really liked her in The Wolf of Wall Street.
Squad.
Wolf of Wall Street.
What's that?
It's a little movie about a wolf.
Oh, that actually is in New York.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
It is.
Oh,
It's
man.
scary.
Ooh. No, and Margot Robbie is a tremendously talented actress. I don't blame her for choosing to be in Suicide Squad. Sometimes it's hard to argue with a fat paycheck.
Yeah.
know? And so, yeah, the movie sucked, but everybody thought it was gonna. So, whatever. And that Midwestern accent from the trailer, I'm already a little bit charmed by it. That she's smoking the cigarette and saying,
What kind of friggin' person bashes in their friend's knee? Who would do that to a friend?
I kind of like where it's going with that, and it's going to be interesting to see how much of the movie is about her home and private life, how much of it is about her mother, and how much of it is about the bashing of the kneecap, how they're going to divide those focuses up.
There's like a big risk that this movie might fall and slip into biopic territory where it takes you through, everything that led her to the Olympics and a lot of the personal drama, which is to be expected, but with biopics it always comes out so forced because you're trying to condense so much of a real person into this 2-hour finite time frame. So
it always comes off as very paint by numbers too. Like you
Yeah.
have those scenes that you pretty much have to have in every biopic. You have, they fall into drug abuse and
okay, while we're on the subject, let's think about this. Which ones are we going to see? Which tropes are we going to see?
Shoot. Oh, okay. I like this.
I don't know anything about Tonya Harding. Maybe she's never touched a drug in her life, but maybe let's assume maybe she has. And I would say
Probably prescription pills would be
some
my
prescription pills addiction scene.
Yeah,
Maybe.
And then something bad is going to happen that's going to force her to kick the addiction, but that's going to be glossed over in like 30 seconds. You know, if they have an addiction element, they're gonna shed it as soon as it's convenient.
Okay, speaking of glossing over, training montage.
Oh, I think that this movie is going to be a 2-hour-long training montage.
You think so? Yeah.
I'm wondering what there's always a childhood tragedy that never gets reconciled until later on. I'm wondering what that's going to be, whether it's something the mom did to her, because I know that that's going to be, you know, from what I see in the trailer, that's going to be a big part of the story.
When I was a kid, did you ever love me?
I made you a champion, knowing you'd hate me for it. That's the sacrifice a mother makes.
You cursed me.
But somewhere in there where we might have this horrible thing that happened to her when she was 6.
Let's see. Do you think they'll opt for the happy bow-tied ending? The ending that is kind of elusive? Like, maybe it seems like the goal is accomplished, but everything
the
is...
drama continues.
Yeah, the dust hasn't quite settled. Or just like a total downer ending.
I'm thinking... People keep saying that this is the Goodfellas of biopics, so I'm thinking probably the third one, where you have her rise to greatness, and then something happens, that house of cards tumbles over, and the end of the movie, she's going to be living in some crappy little Midwestern house, smoking 3 packs of Virginia Slims a day, saying, I was a big star one time, and I, do better than I did, honey.
So she went from the cute Midwestern accent to the old Jewish...
Yeah, the elderly Jewish
grandmother.
Woman. Yes. Named Dorothy Tikva.
That would be quite the character arc.
It would be. I would be impressed if they could, make that transition seamless.
Now if they don't, I'm just going to be disappointed.
I'm going to be disappointed if she doesn't wind up an elderly Jewish woman.
Yeah. Same.
Samesies.
The haters always say, Tonya, tell the truth. There's no such thing as truth. Everyone has their own truth. I was the best figure skater in the world at one point in time.
You call that a clean skate? Stop talking to her. That girl is your enemy.
Who's that?
Jeff was my first date ever. And my mom came.
You need to see a wholesome American family.
I don't have a wholesome American family.
Nothing's ever your fault. I was embarrassed for you.
My entire life, I've been told I wouldn't amount to anything. And you know what? Maybe I would.
4.8.
How do I get a fair shot here?
We also judge on presentation.
We're gonna need to even the playing field. I know a guy, shouldn't even be saying his name. Derek.
The press wanted me to be the pile of crap.
I never did this.
What is going on?
We're with the FBI.
They know something.
What can you tell us about Tonya Harding?
I don't know a Tony Harding.
Aren't you her bodyguard?
When I was a kid, did you ever love me?
I made you a champion, knowing you'd hate me for it. That's the sacrifice a mother makes.
You cursed me. America. They want someone to love, but they want someone to hate. I mean, come on. What kind of friggin' person bashes in their friend's knee? Who would do that to a friend?
Stop that.
Well, we're back from I, Tonya, starring Margot Robbie, and it was all right.
Yeah, I would say it was fine.
Yeah.
It fell into those, like, exact biopic things that I was really afraid of. She had the flaw in the childhood upbringing. Her father left her when she was very young, which that was kind of set up, and they never really told us anything. Like, even in the epilogue, they never really told us if she ever reconnected with
her
him
father.
again.
That's true.
I assume she didn't, but it would have been nice to get some confirmation on that.
There's a couple things like that.
Her mother was really hard on her, which we'll probably talk about.
I think we'll get into that later.
We'll get into that more.
Then there was some substance abuse, but it wasn't ever turned into a plot point, which I kind of appreciate. I'm glad to see at least one biopic that doesn't.
Yeah, so there's like a quick cut that like alludes to maybe she drank a little too much, but
she was also in her 20s, and that's kind of the point it was trying to make. Is like
she was out of shape. She was trying to say things weren't her fault. Like the fact that she was out of shape wasn't her fault, but it then cuts back to like the last 2 months. All she was doing was drinking and partying and stuff. And
of course, training montages.
Yeah, there was a few montages, which is to be expected.
A skating movie
which is why we predicted it. But so it did all of the biopic things, and I think my biggest, well, maybe not the biggest complaint, but one of the bigger complaints that I have with the movie is that it was cramming so much into such a condensed amount of time.
Yeah, it's a little bit messy, a little bit all over the place, because the movie walks us through Tonya Harding's early life briefly, then builds up in the second act her skating career, and then makes kind of an abrupt turn to talk about the incident. I think we all know which one. Was her endorsement by Wheaties. And then it kind of stops all of the development up that we've had up until that point to go into elaborate detail on what happened on that day and the fallout, which is to be expected. It's a movie about Tonya Harding. You don't not get into that. But it was strange to see it done in such a way that it didn't feel like that's what the movie was about until that's all it was about.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is the movie to me, which this is not just this movie, but almost all biopics, is that they're almost always about nothing. They're about the person in a general sense, and then there are a couple of big life-defining events that they just kind of string together until you get more of a complete idea of who the person was. And while I would say that there's probably like a slight bit more emphasis on the Nancy Kerrigan incident, the movie wasn't about that. Like, it couldn't pick if it was about Tonya Harding or if it was about this particular incident that happened with her and Nancy Kerrigan. And that's why I think
it was about her relationship with her husband.
Well, right, and that's what I kind of mean.
Or was it about her mother? Because in the opening act for all of probably the first 20 minutes, the mother was the central antagonist in the story.
Well, and the way that the movie opened in a lot of ways, I felt like the treatment of her mother's character, played by Allison Janney, like right out the gate at the beginning of the movie, you'd almost think that this movie was about her.
Yeah.
If you didn't know anything else, because
it was
she
setting
really...
it up to be about the mother and the daughter.
Yeah.
With maybe the Kerrigan stuff just being like, oh, we know it's coming, how is it going to affect their relationship? Mm. You know, that's what it was setting us up to do. And then Tonya Harding moves out of her mother's house, and that's just about all we see of the mom for the rest of the movie.
Quick segue to say that I think most of the actors in the movie were great.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Margot Robbie is incredible. I mean, she's definitely the most active participant in the making of this film.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. And, I mean, the girl can act.
Yeah. Well, I think close second, though, I really liked Allison Janney. In some sequences, she was almost like the most interesting part of the movie to me.
The only issue I have with it is that the mom's character felt undercooked or underwritten. It's hard for me to really nail it down because I felt like she was presented so one-dimensionally as being a controlling bitch that anytime the movie wanted to allude to any kind of actual relationship between them, it would never have worked. It was an unambiguous bitchy stepmom character from a Disney movie almost. And I really wish that they had mined a little deeper and tried to inject some humanity into the character. Now, that's not to say that Allison Janney didn't do an amazing job portraying her. She certainly did. But I just would like to have seen the part itself be a little bit more rounded.
I really wonder what this movie would have been like if Aaron Sorkin had written it. Because, like if you look at Steve Jobs, for instance, a lot of creative liberties are taken with it. And he was very honest and upfront about the fact that this is not... what you are seeing in these scenes is not literally the embodiment of what actually happened in real life, but what we did was we took real life things and wrapped them into a situation. And I almost wonder, there's a scene when the incident, the Nancy Kerrigan thing, kind of comes in full force. It kind of kicks off with a cop walking up to Tonya and her husband and saying, "Hey, I need to let you know there's been a threat on your life." And there's that moment, and I almost wonder if the movie started with that, and then we could go back and find out more about what made her the person that she is, and we could figure out. I think that the movie could have just been a lot more focused on the Nancy Kerrigan situation and built its through line around that specifically.
Well, would the movie have been improved through editing or writing then? Because I think if you had changed some of the chronology, it might put a different emphasis on all of her early life stuff. Instead of being this weird preamble to the main event, it would have gone back to kind of inform that main event and maybe felt a little bit more cohesive and a little bit more like it was a part of a whole as opposed to what almost feels like two separate movies in a lot of ways.
Well, I think that would start with the writing and then work its way into the editing. Speaking of the editing, there's a lot of talk about how this is kind of like a Scorsese-ish take on Tonya Harding, and if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I think the reason people are describing it that way is, I'm just going to say it, I really think Craig Gillespie was ripping Scorsese off.
Was all this legal? Absolutely not. We were making more money than we knew what to do with.
The press wanted me to be the pile of crap.
I never did this.
You know, I'm sure it's a loving homage and all that, but it doesn't really change what Scorsese did. It just does the same thing that he did. The editing, the camera movement is always real wild and veering, which I thought was distracting.
Yeah. Well, and at certain points it was fine because, there's certain points where they were using it to heighten, like, hey, we're throwing a lot of information in really quickly.
And to move it quickly. But my problem is the opposite of that, is that you have these moments in the film where Tanya's interacting with her husband, Galuli, or her mother, that you should slow down, you should get quiet, you should do a few more close-ups and a few less edits.
And take a few beats.
And really let the actors wear that scene. And instead, you have all of this flowing camera work, the same kind of composition and the same editing that you have in these moments where she's skating in the Olympics.
Yeah.
The tone is just flat. It's got one speed that it moves at, which, if you really go through and look at Goodfellas and Casino, that's not the case for those movies. The movies have starts and stops, and it takes the energy and it brings it up, and then it rolls it back down. Mm-hmm. It's a much more thoughtfully crafted pacing.
Because it is thoughtfully crafted. I mean,
that's true.
Scorsese wasn't ever really ripping anybody off. He wasn't really trying to pay homage to his betters or his formers by ripping them off. He had a pacing and a style that was uniquely something of his own.
Yeah.
That he could visualize in his head and then, presumably then be able to explain that and translate it to his crew and make the movies that he's been known to make.
Well, and on the point of comparing this to Scorsese, one of the most well-worn tools in his toolkit is his use of soundtracks to give us a mood, to put us in a place and a time, and to inform the story.
And to heighten...
Yeah, to heighten our emotional involvement.
Yeah, or heighten even the irony of the situation at hand.
Yeah.
Like, when that... I always go back to that scene in Goodfellas where the soft, pretty part of Eric Clapton's Layla starts up, and that's... You see the montage of all this just, like, horribly... horribly disfigured dead people in freezers and stuff.
And it was a very
because it's an ironic choice. You're like, oh, it's indicative of the times. It's indicative of like what was on the radio, what these people would be listening to, but they're all just like dead and lifeless.
Yeah.
There's an interesting play on the mood that's happening there. Now, I think what you're getting at is the same thing that I'm kind of trying to get at here too, is that the music and the placement of the music in this movie, to me at least, was absolutely infuriating.
It was a nightmare.
And I have the songs.
Oh, do you have the song list?
I have the song list here.
Oh my god, this is going to be exhausting. Go ahead.
So here are the songs used in this film. You'll recognize these songs in probably a dozen other films in which they're all used together.
Or just go to a Buffalo Wild Wings on a slow Wednesday. You're guaranteed to hear these. Go ahead.
You've got How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? You've got The Chain by Fleetwood Mac. You've got Barracuda by Heart.
Haven't heard that
before.
You've got
Dream a Little Dream of Me. The Passenger by Susie and the Banshees. 25 or 6 to 4 by Chicago, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. And
it's a great song.
Felt so out of place here.
Yeah.
Goodbye Stranger by Supertramp, which was really aggravating to me because to me you just can't top the use of that song in Magnolia.
Like a king without a castle, like a queen without a throne. I'm a dirty morning lover, and I must be moving on. Now I believe in what you say. It's the undisputed truth. But I have to have things my own way to keep me in my youth. Like a ship without an anchor, like a slave without a chain. Just the thought of those sweet ladies and the shiver through my veins. Now we're going shining like brand new.
Anytime I hear it, I'm almost reminded of that movie. So for them to use it in a really lackluster way in this movie was just all of the music placement felt like, get it, guys? We're doing
the
song,
Scorsese thing.
Yeah, we're gonna cut it to that.
It's gonna be exciting and rollicking,
and it wasn't.
No, and the part that was driving me so crazy is that every scene worked the same way. You would generally start with a close-up of a thing or a person, whatever, and the camera would be moving too much, and it would slowly come out, and a song you've heard a million times would start, and the song would play in its entirety through the scene. And as soon as the song's done, the scene's done. And they'll start a new scene with a new close-up and a new song over and over.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of my biggest complaints with the movie.
That's my number one.
I think either my number one or a close number two. So they did this thing where they superimposed Margot Robbie's face over a stunt double skater. And not only is it incredibly obvious.
The only reason we know this is because it's glaringly obvious.
It is absolutely abhorrent.
Oh my god.
It's so bad. Like, I cannot believe... Like, I just don't know Wouldn't you do enough tests of that and make sure you had enough money in your budget to make sure you could
you
rotoscope that or whatever it is that you do?
It feels like a draft almost. Like this is like they rush it through so the editor can temporarily put it in so that they can keep editing the movie.
As like a proxy.
Yeah.
And then we'll get back
and
to
then
it
we'll get
later.
back to it when the graphics department is done with the final product. They're going to replace it, and they never did, is what it feels like.
Like especially, watch the parts where she spins a lot. You see it.
Yeah. And
you really see it.
From
and it's
here
like,
up, it's like you pointed out, skin tones don't match.
No.
And you can see where they're compositing certain parts of her. And it just felt very... It was very uncanny valley.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very eerie. Because I knew... I now felt totally disconnected from her from her otherwise great performance.
Oh yeah, and that's the biggest shame of this whole thing is that Margot Robbie just nailed it.
Yeah.
I mean, there is
Knocked it out of the
absolutely If it weren't for the fact that she's up for some stiff competition with that stupid popularity contest in Los Angeles, I would say that she's a shoo-in for that nice little statue the Academy gives out.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I kind of feel like Frances McDormand kind of deserves it in a way.
She does, because Margot Robbie's only really been around for 5 to 8 years, give or take.
Yeah, and I'm sure she's been hustling, but I think as a mainstream audience, we have yet to really get to know her. Everything is good so far, and I hope that she, and I wouldn't...
Everything is good?
Suicide. She is good in everything.
Yeah.
Like,
See,
she is good in everything,
that's what I was trying to get
and
to.
she is generally always doing, at the very least, the best that she can with what she has to work with.
Yeah. And everybody in this movie does.
Definitely.
I wouldn't say that there's a weak player in the cast.
No, which is nice to know simply because there's a lot of people you haven't heard of in this cast. Like the guy who plays her husband is a guy, I think his name is Sebastian Stan.
Yeah.
Never heard of him.
I've never, I have no knowledge of this person.
The guy, Bobby Cannavale, he's one of the interview subjects in the film. And I've seen him in a few things, like he did a Woody Allen movie a couple years ago. And but I haven't seen him in much else personally. I think he's a more well-known actor, but I'm not very familiar with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, outside of Margot and Allison Janney, not a whole lot of big names in this thing at all.
Yeah, pretty humble cast. As critical as I am of this movie, there is definitely craftsmanship that went into it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of attention to detail. Sometimes I wonder if that attention is necessarily in the right place. But
it's true. I don't think anybody was slacking in the making of the movie. I just don't think that the execution was all there, and I think it could have been a lot tighter.
Yeah.
It felt long.
It didn't stick the landing. It did. It started to pick up a little bit about halfway through, but there again, we did. Everybody knows that the clubbing incident is coming. So once it starts to get on that track, you're like, okay, this is what I came here for. So it's a little easier to you're anticipating that. And then once it clears that, the last, I'm going to say 10 minutes were a little muddy again. Because there's some leftover legal subplots and, it never reconciles with the mother, which still bothers me. Even if they don't end up getting along at the end of the movie, there was nothing.
Yeah.
They spent all this time in the first act establishing a relationship
to just kind of have it end.
There's no second half of that sentence. Yeah. And
she was an asshole to the bitter end.
Yeah, and you know what? If you want to have Allison Janney play an asshole to her daughter, if you want to have Allison... Really?
I don't know why you're worried about it.
It's bothering me. If you want to have Is it really? Okay. If you really want to have Allison Janney play at just a one-dimensional asshole to her daughter, that's okay. But don't make her such a pivotal character in the developmental act of the film. And then just drop him. Like a load of hot garbage.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not.
Maybe, I think, and it's possible that maybe that's why some people who are critical of the movie think that they were trying to bait sympathy for Tonya Harding because, her mom was an asshole to her the whole time she was growing up.
Yeah.
So
that is another side of it too, is that I don't feel like they ever dug too deep into Tonya Harding's flaws. They allude to, she's got a messed up childhood and she's not the most responsible person on the planet and she was abused by her husband, but there's no flaws from within her.
Yeah, and it's like they were trying to get there because they kept having that mantra about how she always said, well, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. And she would always say that and say that and say that. And so I thought that was interesting because I thought, I'd like to see where they go.
Yeah.
I'd like to see where they take that and
where the
show
story
us how
finally gets
fault.
her in a corner to where it is her fault.
And they didn't.
They
They just keep having her say that over and over again until the end of the movie. And then it's just like, okay,
I guess it wasn't her fault.
And really, in a lot of ways, the way they presented it is that it wasn't.
It wasn't.
It was like these other people that were
and that's
in her
fine.
life.
That's fine, but don't set it up as though
that
there might be an arc there that just isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't really have much of an arc, except she finds herself. She knows more about herself, so I guess that's fine. It's hard to wring a character arc out of a biopic. It's just kind of one of the natural limitations of the genre. Is you can force one in and it's stupid.
Yeah.
Or you can be making a movie about a guy like Johnny Cash who just naturally through his life had an arc that just like he had a very story-like life. Or you can just jam one in where it doesn't belong. And I'm struggling for a specific example, except most biopics tend to do that. Possibly W. But that was so entertaining that I can't really knock W for like mining story out of it because I enjoyed that movie. You actually made me go back and watch it.
Yeah, I enjoyed W. I thought that was a good movie, and I'm not a big Oliver Stone fan most of the time.
No, it's weird.
But I did like that
when he's good, he's good, but most of the time he's not.
Well, I think when he's good is a lot of times when he's good, it's when he's picking an angle that you don't expect him to pick. And with W, that's exactly what he did. It was more about how he was trying to impress Dad. Yeah. And that's all he wanted, he wanted to impress his dad.
Yeah, and I think that's almost what I expected from this movie, was maybe not necessarily I need to impress Mom, but a conflict like that wasn't necessarily true to real life, but it still kind of gives you a look into the person, the real person, just through some storytelling. Yeah. Some creative bending here and there. But instead it was more factual, more just like reading the bullet points of the Wikipedia page. And I mean, the story itself is pretty twisted and pretty weird, but
it didn't feel that. It didn't
feel twisted or weird. It just felt like, okay, now this is happening.
Yeah.
This is happening, and this is happening. And roll credits. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, there was nothing remarkable about even the last shot of the movie either. I
don't
felt
even
like
remember it.
It was the blood on the mat when she
when she becomes a boxer, and
it's just like,
okay,
don't you come up with like maybe a more indicative final shot? Like, I get leaving some blood behind on the mat. Like, I get what they were doing with it, but it just felt like a real dull note.
Yeah, why not end with her like taking off her skates and hanging them up and walking out of a room?
Yeah,
because that would say something.
Yeah.
But I guess hindsight's 20/20. But
So positive marks that I would give the movie. The performances were good. There were some funny breaking of the fourth wall moments that were pretty good.
Right,
I liked that.
Stop that.
And then I think also I learned a few things that I didn't know about the whole situation. I just had a more nothing too specific, but I just had a more broad strokes idea of what really went down.
Yeah.
And just some stuff because I was a kid when this happened. I was like a little kid when this happened. So
and the movie does a good job of being a time capsule without throwing it in your face too, because they make just it's a blink and you'll miss it allusion to just after Tonya Harding's fame starts to kind of diminish. Somebody's got a TV on in the background and the police are hauling OJ out of the back of a Bronco. Mm-hmm. And that's very much the way the development of the 24-hour news cycle kind of evolved. And so there are a lot of little things like that I liked that, I was a child for the 90s, but it's still like, oh yeah, I remember people wearing weird combinations of denim and wool.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And mustaches that had no business being mustaches. Little touches like that really brought you in without being just obtusely, you weren't seeing like Wham on TV.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with Wham.
One other major issue that I have with the movie. I really would have liked to see more of Nancy Kerrigan. Yeah. And I would have liked to have seen...
who is Nancy Kerrigan?
More about that, because there's one quick aside where she alludes to... By the way, me and Nancy were buddies, and we were together a lot on the road.
Yeah, and there's exactly 2 shots.
That's it.
And then that's it.
That's literally it. Like, Nancy Kerrigan is in maybe 4 shots of the movie. 4 shots of the movie, not scenes. 4 literal appearances shots in the film. And
considering that 50% of the movie is
so much of the weight of the movie is placed on that situation, it would have been nice to kind of see more of a balanced perspective on that.
Yeah.
So that's another real issue that I have with the movie.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But all in all, it was fine. So what would you rate it?
I would rate this one broken kneecap out of 2.
Okay. I'm gonna rate it a double axle, but you were trying for the triple axle. So you're trying for the triple axle, but you only landed a double axle.
Yeah, a double axle. Okay, so like you're trying to go... Okay, yeah.
So, you didn't quite stick the landing.
Didn't quite stick the landing. You tried, and you tried
and
to
you
excel.
Pulled something off.
Yeah, and that's commendable. A double axle is still commendable at the end of the day. You can't really skate with one leg, but boy, there is no second half to this thought.
Anyways, that's I, Tonya.
Catch it in the movie theater.
It's late.
Was I Tonya such a pal? Okay.
So that's I, Tonya, from our perspective. What'd you think? Let us know in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. This has been Before and After Movies. I screwed up the title. It's Movies Before and After.
We'll get it right eventually.
And we'll see you before and after another movie sometime soon.